Neisseria actually we are going to discuss today. First one is the Neisseria pathogenic ones and the non-pathogenic ones. And in case of the pathogenic ones, our first topic is the Neisseria gonorrhoeae, and the second one is the Neisseria meningitidis. There are some other non-pathogenic Neisseria species like Neisseria sicca, Neisseria subflava. There are flavescens, lacticata. There are other also very other non-pathogenic species of Neisseria, which are actually most of all them actually the commensal or natural flora, and they are actually located in the nasopharynx. So this is a very important thing to remember, especially in the vivas. So there are actually non-pathogenic Neisseria species in our body which are called commensals and are found in the nasopharynx. This is a very important thing to know. Then our pathogenic ones. The first one is the Neisseria gonorrhoeae, which is also known as gonococci, and the second one is the Neisseria meningitidis, which is also known as the meningococci. Let's have a look at the differences between these two, because it's a very common question whether you go to give any exam which is home or abroad, USMLE or professional exams. These differences come a lot. So let's have a look at the first one. Polysaccharide capsule. In case of gonorrhea, there are no polysaccharide capsules, but the meningitidis, it is capsulated. This is the very first important thing you should know about the difference. Then the second point, that morphologically, if you seen under the Grammy staining, gonococci will look like kidney shaped, but the meningococci is kind of plain or convex. So it's actually morphologically a very important thing. When you see under microscope, you should remember these two things. Then this is the very important thing. If you want to differentiate between gonococci and meningococci biochemically, you should remember that gonococci does not ferment maltose, but meningococci ferments maltose. It's an easy way to remember. The thing is that there is M in meningococci and maltose in M in maltose. So this is a very important thing. And one thing you should also remember, that glucose, that both of these ferments glucose. Both, that means gonococci and meningococci. The way of to remember this thing is gonococci has G and meningococci also has G. So it's a very important and basic thing. Biochemical test to differentiate between gonococci and meningococci is though both ferments glucose, but only meningococci ferments maltose. So it's a very important thing you should remember. Okay, let's go to the next point, which is the route of transmission. The gonococci is mainly transmitted by the sexual contacts. It's the main route, but though some are actually transmitted during the birth canal, perinatally it causes the neonatal conjunctivitis. In case of meningococci, its main route is the respiratory route and the oral secretions. The common cause actually found like using of inhalers, someone's inhaler using of another one's. It's a very common way to spread the infection. Okay. Now the next differences, the diseases caused by the both these two. As usual, you have seen gonococci, it usually causes gonorrhea. That means urethritis in male and cervicitis in female. After gonorrhea, there are many consequences of gonorrhea. If it becomes disseminated, and like if the gonococcal bacteria is accumulated in the joint spaces, then it causes septic arthritis. And like if it is and in case of female, if it's spreads to the other pelvic organs, it causes the pelvic inflammatory disease. Now remember, I told you about the one route of transmission of gonococci was during perinatally, and if a neonate during if he gets into touch with the gonococcal bacteria in mother's birth canal, then he or she may develop neonatal conjunctivitis. And another one of the diseases caused by the gonococci, it's the Fitz-Hugh-Curtis syndrome, which is actually a kind of pericapsulitis of the liver. It's also cause of disseminated gonococcal infection. It's also a thing of gonococcal infection. Okay, now after the gonococcal, let's have a look at the disease caused by the meningococci. Meningococci, as the name is sounds, it's meningo, it causes meningitis. And if the meningococci causes a severe form of sepsis, it's called meningococcemia. And the most severe form of meningococcemia is Waterhouse-Friderichsen syndrome, that we're going to discuss a bit later. Okay, after knowing about the diseases they cause, let's have a look at the treatment. Gonococci is actually treated with the third generation cephalosporin like ceftriaxone. Meningococci is also treated with ceftriaxone, and also it can be treated with penicillin. Okay, so these were actually the differences between the gonococci and meningococci. So after having a look at the differences between them, now we are going to talk individually, and first of all we are going to talk about the Neisseria gonorrhoeae. Now we are going to talk individually about Neisseria gonorrhoeae and Neisseria meningitis. First one is the Neisseria gonorrhoeae. Let's have a look at the characteristics of Neisseria gonorrhoeae. First of all, it is a intracellular diplococci. If you do Grammy staining with a specimen of it, you will see gram-negative diplococci. As you can see in this picture, let me mark. If you this is a polymorphonuclear leukocyte. It's like, that means it's a neutrophil, and you can see there are small diplococci in this the polymorphonucleus. So these are the intracellular diplococci found in actually the polymorphonuclear cells in the specimen. So these are the very characteristics of Neisseria gonorrhoeae, which are intracellular gram-negative diplococci. Okay, the second one is the pili. Neisseria gonorrhoeae has a very characteristic pili because it can change its pili very at a high rate. So it's actually antibody formation is very much difficult against this pili. Now second one is the third one is the lipo-oligosaccharide. Cis lipo-oligosaccharide, that means that the sugar chain in this in lipopolysaccharide there is a longer sugar chain, but lipo-oligosaccharide they have a shorter chain, and this causes especially ciliary destruction during gonorrhea infection. And in the fourth one, you can see it's oxidase and catalase positive. Actually, for this reason, they can survive the intracellular killing in the white blood cells. So this is a very important thing: oxidase positive and catalase positive. And last but not the least, it metabolizes only glucose. You should remember from the differences between the meningococci and gonococci that gonorrhea only metabolizes glucose but cannot metabolize maltose. Okay, now what are the virulence factors of Neisseria gonorrhoeae? First of all, as it's the pili, because it's anti-phagocytic and it also helps in the attachment of gonorrhea to the cells of the body. Pili is the first virulence factor. Second one is the LOS, lipo-oligosaccharide, as it causes cell death and ciliary destruction. The third one is the IgA1 protease. It's a very important thing. As we know that there is IgA antibodies, there is the mucosa, all the secretions of the body. So if someone has to any bacteria break that IgA antibody, so it can cause very easy colonization in the that host. The fourth one is the pore protein. Pore protein actually inhibits the fusion of phagosome and lysosome. This is a very important thing during the pathogenesis of Neisseria gonorrhoeae. And the fifth one is the protein 2. It also helps in the attachment of Neisseria to the cells, the mucosal cells. There are some other things called OPA protein. It also helps in the attachment. So there are lots of virulent things in case of the Neisseria gonorrhoeae. And so let's have a look how the Neisseria gonorrhoeae invades its host. That means let's have a look at the pathogenesis. In the pathogenesis, this look at very deeply in this picture that first of all there is the adherence. It's the urogenital epithelium, as I said earlier, that actually it transmits through the sexual context. So the urogenital epithelium, Neisseria gonorrhoeae, attaches to the mucosal cell wall. Then it competes with the resident microbiota, and after through various factors and after winning the competition, it releases the peptidoglycan. As I said earlier, it causes the destruction of the mucosal cells as well as the ciliary destruction. So it actually goes to the submucosa, and this is a very important thing, that the infection of Neisseria gonorrhoeae is actually in the submucosa. So it's a very important thing, frequently asked in the questions, that Neisseria gonorrhoeae, where do colonizes Neisseria gonorrhoeae? It's in the submucosa. So this you should remember this always. After going to submucosa, the cells of, it's very easy, cells of the immune system comes and attacks, try to engulf it. Some of the neutrophils can engulf. Then there is a purulent exudate, and you can see there is no fusion of phagosome and lysosome, so there is intracellular diplococci. And during this process, there are lots of cytokines, chemokines are released. This causes an inflammatory phase. There is a fever and a very high inflammatory stage, and this causes the pathogenesis of Neisseria. During this stage, some of the Neisseria actually can disseminate through blood and can accumulate in other organs of the body except the urogenital tract. Okay, now let's go further into the world of Neisseria. What diseases cause the Neisseria gonorrhoeae? In case of male, the most common is the urethritis. It may be acute or chronic, and as we can know, consequence of urethritis are what? Like it may cause cystitis, it may cause epididymis, orchitis. There are lots of other, because of the consequences of the urethritis. In case of female, is the cervicitis, and we should also remember the consequences of cervicitis, like pelvic inflammatory disease, salpingitis, like endometritis. And one thing very important, as it causes salpingitis, it can block the fallopian tube and it can cause infertility. That's a very important thing, that Neisseria infection can cause infertility, and because of the ascending inflammation from the cervicitis. One thing you should guys have seen, urethritis, cervicitis. Neisseria gonorrhoeae only and only attacks columnar cells. This is a very important thing. It only affects the columnar cells. It's a very important thing. It has affinity to the columnar cells. And after male and female, we can say, as it's a very rare one, though it can cause conjunctivitis in the neonates, and if the Neisseria gonorrhoeae is disseminated, then it causes septic arthritis, tendinitis, tensinovitis, skin lesions. These all are actually consequence of the sepsis. That means the Neisseria bacteria in the blood. So these were the diseases, and in the difference I told about the Fitzhugh-Curtis syndrome caused by the Neisseria. Okay, now one interesting thing, frequently asked question in the vivas for better marks. Actually, there are two questions you should remember. If a person is has Neisseria gonorrhoeae, will this patient develop protective immunity? That means whether he will get immunity after the first infection. But the answer is no, because the antibody is very much late, produced very much late consequence of the infection, late antibody, and there is very variation in the pili protein, so it's actually tough to make the antibody. And the third reason why the patient will not develop protective immunity is many people have this antibody. Very sexually active people have this antibody before the infection, so it's actually not a protective immunity. So the answer is actually no. And which factor predisposes gonococcal infection? It's actually a complement deficiency, especially C6 to C9. You remember then porine protein or POR protein, which was a very